4 objectives for the day: an early visit to the Hofburg, the Habsburgs' giant downtown year-round palace, followed by a gorp at the Graben, and an afternoon at the Schönbrunn, their summer palace. Then, an evening of surprise. On the metro again to downtown Wien, followed by a short walk back up to the Hofburg. The Hofburg, originally called the Schweizerhof when built back in the 16th century. It's the oldest part of the Hofburg. Remember, the Habsburgs were originally Swiss. It houses the imperial apartments, museums, a church, a chapel, the Austrian National Library, the Spanish Writing School, and the President of Austria's offices. Here's a model of the Hofburg. To get a better idea of its size, here's a bird's eye view of it. The semi-horseshoe part is the Neuburg, or New Building, built by Franz Joseph and completed only 3 years before his death in 1916. The Neuburg looks out on the vast Heldenplatz, with a statue of Wien's savior from the Turks, Prince Eugene. The building houses several museums: the ethnographic, musical instrument, papyrus, and arms and armor. I have a bone to pick with Wien, actually with all of Austria. They, like many other places, don't allow videoing or photography inside their museums. So what little you see here is sadly only from the internet. So here Peter, with his back to the camera, and I are at the start of the imperial apartment Besuch, or visit. The domed portico you just saw has a simple yet elegantly frescoed ceiling and a very imperial-like entry. Just to orient ourselves, a look at the model of the Hofburg. In the foreground, the domed entryway to the imperial apartments. This is where we went in. We make our way up the somewhat grand imperial Treppenhaus staircase to the apartments proper. The Treppenhaus of the Prince Bischof at his Neue Residenz, Würzburg, is by far grander than this. The Emperor's audience room, a full-length painting of him as a young man, hangs on the back wall. What a wonderful ceramic-covered stove that stands in the corner of the room. The Emperor's bedroom and bed. He's probably had some nasty turns. That bed is awfully narrow. One extra turn and his imperial ass is on the floor. Cece's living room. How delightfully feminine, yet plush. Oh, Cece, short for Elizabeth, was Franz Joseph's beautiful wife. She's a knockout, right? She was beautiful, that's true. But the myths that have grown up around her, as I mentioned before, are similar to Princess Diana. They were both psychologically troubled women, and somewhat mashugana, or at least ditzy. She became even more traumatized by the death of her son and heir, Rudolph, and on September the 10th in 1898, while walking along the promenade on Lake Geneva, was stabbed to death by an idiot Italian anarchist. The inner palace courtyard. In the middle, a statue of Francis I. At the right, the palace restaurant, where an exhausted Peter sat and coffeed while I went off to the Emperor's chapel, leaving the inner courtyard by the Swiss gate into another, smaller courtyard. Here is the entrance to the chapel itself. This is an insignificant chapel, though it dates back to 1449 in Frederick III's reign. Then in the 17th, 18th century, it became Baroque. Then back to its original Gothic heritage in 1802. It's a mishmash. There's one notable thing about it. It is here that the Wiener Sängerknaben, the Vienna Boys Choir, sang for the Emperor. They still sing every Sunday at Mass. The Imperial Orchestra performs in one of the state reception rooms. The military ball is held in the Kaisersaal, the Emperor's ballroom. It's called the Prunksaal, the showpiece. It sort of takes your breath away, doesn't it? It's the most famous part of the National Library, started in the 14th century, containing 2.6 million volumes. It was built by the preeminent architect Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach and his son. It's 77 meters or 252 feet long and the largest Baroque library in Europe. The statues, including that of Emperor Charles VI, are by Peter and Paul Strudel. I didn't make that up. There are 2 stories of shelves concealing studies with secret entrances. In the background, in the cupola above, is a trompe l'oeil fresco by Daniel Graben, 1730, that depicts the apotheosis of Charles VI. With your back to the dome of the Hofburg, you look out over the Michaelisplatz. Slightly to your right is the Michaelerkirche, St. Michael the Archangel's Church, at one time the parish church of the imperial court, then called zum Heiligen Michael. It dates from 1220 to 1240, and originally a Romanesque and early Gothic church. You can see remnants of the early frescoes and the brilliant colored designs that once covered the whole church. The main altar was designed by Jean-Baptiste d'Avranches, 1782. The centerpiece is a Byzantine icon of the Crétin school of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Looking upward is the Pièce de Résistance, Fall of the Angels by Lorenzo Mattielli, 1782. A winged St. Michael, sword in hand, driving the fallen angels out of heaven down toward earth. This is the sogenannten Graben. It is the moat that once surrounded the walled city of Wien. It is now a pedestrianized walkway with the Pestsäule in the middle, fancy shops and cafes. What we see now is a strolling Graf von der Dingsbums Mönch. A further look back down toward the Stephansdomplatz. It's funny what you see in the spring when you haven't got your gun. The Café de l'Europe. Touristically expensive. Let's move on down the Graben and grab another one. The Chattanooga Cafe Bar and Grill. Choose your fancy by its picture and price. Peter and I stopped for a cafe and a gorp along the Graben. When in doubt, Graben, a fancy gun store. Closed, damn it! It would only be a wish store, as most of the guns would be fancy shotguns, drillings, or feelings, $5,000 and up. Oh, now, I think this is almost too much. This is the famous Lehmann's Viennese chocolatier. As the video pans along, it's also a disgustingly good patisserie and bakery. I can taste all those goodies now. Yum, yum. Nice, small but exclusive, bespoke tailor. Thank God I live in Scottsdale. I can't even remember when I had a suit on last. 90% of the time it's shorts. The rest of the time, at most, a blazer and a bowler tie. Here's one of Vienna's fancy crystal and china shops. If you look real hard, you can see the word Meissen in front of the orangey-looking platter. Now for the real observant. Let's see which of you can make out Peter in the video clip. Look hard. You might catch a glimpse of him. You gotta be quick. Peter and I grabbed a quick bite and then walked towards the Stephansdomplatz, past the Chattanooga Cafe Bar and Grill. We eventually got to the subway entrance. It was a boiling hot and humid day, not one for sightseeing. The metro was about 20 minutes, with about a 15-minute walk at the other end past rows of charabancs. Buses to you lot. Now that's a gobstopper if ever there was one. This palace was the result of a series of buildings and expansions over time. From the rear, it's just as magnificent. The original central part was the design by the famous Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach in the reign of Emperor Leopold I in 1688. A view of the back of the palace, looking through the pond and fountain known as Neptune's Well. The palace really came into its heyday as both a residence and a place for grand imperial festivities under Empress Maria Theresia in 1750. Standing with your back to the palace, the formal French gardens lead up to the Gloriette on top of the hill. It's called the Great Parterre, or the Great Ground Floor, as it was here that Fischer von Erlach had originally planned to build the main palace. It's really gorgeous. It was here in 1830 that Franz Joseph I was born, and after he came to the throne in 1848, he moved into apartments in the West Wing. He occupied them till his death in 1916. Now let's go inside. The Schönbrunn and its vast estate was originally a hunting lodge. There are 1,441 rooms, only 40 open to the public. You'll see only a few of them. The staircase, though elegant, is pathetically small compared to the Treppenhaus at Würzburg. The fresco by Sebastiano Ricci in 1701-1702 is the conversion to the throne of Joseph II, depicted as a hero of war and a man of virtue, who finally receives the crown of laurels before the throne of eternity. No conceit in his family, he got it all. The guards room, the old-fashioned security system protecting the imperial apartments. The billiard room is the first in the suite of rooms comprising Franz Joseph's private apartments. Franz Joseph received government ministers and generals once a week. While they waited here, they played billiards on the Biedermeier billiard table. The two large paintings are connected with the Order of Marie Theresia. The middle one commemorates the initial investiture in 1758. The other, two centenaries of the order. A Rococo-embellished walnut room. This is Franz Joseph's audience room for ministers, generals, and members of the public. Franz Joseph developed a fantastic memory for names. This is Franz Joseph's rather plain study. He worked from 5 a.m. and had his meals at his desk. The two paintings are one of him at age 33 and the bigger one of his wife Cece. He was also known to have long pockets and short arms. Franz Joseph's bedroom with a plain iron bed. He was up at 4 a.m., cold water ablutions, followed by prayers. He died in this bed at the age of 86. A door leads out into the royal seat of ease, La Chaise d'Aisance. It worked on the English system. Notice the handle to the left of the toilet. Pull up to flush. Cece's study. The spiral staircase lets Cece access her private apartments on the ground floor. The marital bedroom of Franz Joseph and Cece. The bedroom was only used during the procreative years 1855 to 1868. After that, they both took lovers. Cece's neo-Rococo style reception room. The clock in front of the mirror has at its back a reversed face. This is so as you could tell the time with a quick glance in the mirror. This is Cece's dining room, all set for a Mahlzeit. Silverware by Meyerhofer and Klinkosch, crystalware by Lobmeyer and Company. For imperial occasions, the cuisine was French, for informal, Viennese. This room is also known as Marie Antoinette's room, as there was once a tapestry hung on the wall showing Marie Antoinette and her family. The Spiegelkammer, the mirror room, a stateroom from the time of Marie Theresia. The mirrors give the impression of a much larger space. Here, 6-year-old Mozart gave his first concert, leapt onto Marie Theresia's lap, and planted a kiss on her cheek. Some cheek! This is the monster Great Gallery. I'd call it the Kaisersaal. It's for balls, receptions, and banquets. The mirrors, the white gold stucco decoration, ceiling frescoes, make it a magnificent Rococo Prunksaal, or wonderpiece. The fresco by Gregorio Guglielmi shows a prospering monarchy. Enthroned are Marie Theresia and her husband Franz Stephan, surrounded by monarchical virtues, around which are allegories of the Habsburgs' crowned lands, each with its riches and resources. Next to the Great Gallery is the Small Gallery, used for smaller family celebrations in the reign of Marie Theresia. The Blue Chinese Salon, the first room of the private apartments of Franz Stephan, husband of Maria Theresa. The wall hangings are made of rice paper. The two tables are inlaid, Florentine style, pietre dure, large seamlessly abutted pieces of semi-precious stones. It was in this room that Karl I, on November the 11th, 1918, renounced the throne, thus ending the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Vieux Lac room, the old lacquered room, Franz Stefan's study. After his death in 1765, Marie Theresia had it turned into a memorial room. Black lacquer panels are set into walnut paneling with gilt frames. Pompeo Battoni completed his portrait in 1709. The Gobelin room is so named after the tapestries on the walls. The large one is of the port of Antwerp. The 6 armchairs have tapestries depicting the 12 months of the year and the signs of the zodiac. Maria Theresia's bedroom. Emperor Franz Joseph was born in this room in 1830. The wallpaper is from the era of Franz Karl and Sophie, Franz Joseph's parents, who used this room as their bedroom. The restored bed of Marie Theresia was once in the Hofburg, but in 1980 was moved to the Schönbrunn. Sadly, Sisi's private apartments are not open to the public. These ground floor Weiß und Gold rooms were reception rooms. The contrast of the stark white walls with a touch of gold, contrast with the complex colored parquet flooring, combined to make for a very attractive venue for smaller receptions. These rooms are in use today and can be rented for weddings, etc., even for Betriebsausflüge. The Imperial Chapel has remained virtually unchanged since its design by Fischer von Erlach. The interior design was by the famous Jesuit lay brother Andrea Poggio, who also designed the Gesù and the St. Ignazio churches in Roma. This chapel was finished by 1728. Though dedicated to Mary Magdalene, Marie Theresia had the painting of her over the altar replaced by one of the Marriage of the Blessed Virgin Mary by Paul Troger. Georg Donner designed the marble altar. It was dedicated by the Archbishop of Wien in 1745 with the whole court and Marie Theresia in attendance for the 4-hour ceremony. It was a very, very long, hot and very humid day. Man alive, were we glad to be done with the Schönbrunn and back on that subway all the way back to the Stephansplatz and the Graben. We staggered up the Graben, past the cafes and the Pestsäule, to Peter's favorite spot, Café Meinl. What a relief just to sit down. A nice, cool, relaxing drink and a gort from the top of the Graben back down past the Pestsäule under scaffolding for cleaning, with luxury stores lining both sides with all sorts of Schmuckstückes. This Schmucker, Heidelwein, specializes in off-the-wall watches with prices to match. This one has classically shaped pieces. They're all very nice, bloody expensive, yet totally lacking in imagination and artistic flair. They're not for me. Julius Meinl is a small cafe with a commanding view. It's a sort of people-watching place. If there's no one in the Graben to watch, then you can always find someone in the cafe, like we did in Berlin in 2005. The famous PP Concert in P-flat minor. Peter has another idea why he likes the Julius Meinl Café. Puppchen, du bist mein Augenstern. Puppchen, du bist zum Fressen gern. Puppchen, mein süßes Puppchen. Nein, oder Spaß, du hast so was. As dusk was beginning to turn into night, we left Café Meinl for a very special feasting place. We could have taken a fiacre, but decided to walk the short distance to zum Schwarzen Kameel. First opened in 1618 by Johann Baptiste Kameel, originally just an exotic food and spice shop. He named it in English At the Black Camel. Johann Baptiste emphasized always the sensory delights of a nourishing nature. In 1825, it was named Pavere to the Habsburgian court. It became the gathering place for nobility and artists, including Ludwig van Beethoven. It was redecorated in 1901 in the Art Nouveau style. It is now owned by the Friese family and is expanded to a deli, buffet, wine store, catering, and fine dining. A great way to start the evening. Several glasses of sekt. So what can you get at the Schwarzen Kameel? These are not just by happenstance. They happen to be happen. Happen are bites. You might say tapas in Spanish, or appetizers. What they really are just happenings. For those romantic, sexy couples, there's nothing like a pick-me-up that 24 oysters won't fix. Add a dash of Tabasco. They just slide right down. For an authentic Austrian entree, it's Tafelspitz mit Geröste, thick slices of boiled beef served with fried grated potatoes and a combination of apple and horseradish sauce on the side. Hummel, hummel, moss, moss. Oh, no. This is hummer. Lobster, lobster. They only give you bits and pieces, not the whole Magilla. For me, just another appetizer option. Yes, rare lamb chops. Not for me. I'm English. Well done with lots of mint sauce. Better still, wild boar in season. To die for. There are 24 bottles of wine on the wall. If one of the bottles happens to fall, there are 23 bottles of wine on the wall. Kameel's wine cellar with great variety. Austria is not known for its reds, maybe redheads, but not reds. Rather, it's whites. Here's some desserts. Marble or bunt cake, or macaroons, or Apfelstrudel mit ein Twist in a glass. If I can't get chocolate mousse with raspberries, forget about it. Look, these two men from Verona having just stuffed themselves with some of the offering you just heard, and that was just from the June menu, a new one every month. The Habsburgian maitre d', Johann Georg Kempsbeichler, a polyglot with great charm. He heads up a small but outstandingly trained staff. What a joy to be around. He even has a change of costume for every occasion. Eat there or be square.